At family dinner, my sister's hand cracked across my face as she spat. "You've got 10 minutes to get out of my house." Mom and Dad laughed, clapping like it was some cruel performance. My cheek burned, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I reached into my bag, pulled out a thick file, and slammed it onto the table. The silverware rattled the room, froze. With a slow smile, I whispered, "Then you all have 5. None of them knew the papers inside would flip everything they thought they owned. I was 25 the summer I moved back to Louisville, Kentucky. The city heat carried a heavy sweetness, the kind that clung to your skin and refused to let go. Out on the edge of town, where the suburbs dissolved into long fences and wide horse pastures, stood my grandmother Margaret's ranch. It wasn't glamorous paint peeling from the barn doors, wood beams weathered to gray, but it breathed history. Every creak of the floorboards seemed to carry the voices of the people who had lived there before us. Margaret was fading by then. The years and the Kentucky summers had worn her down. Her hands shook when she buttoned her cardigan, but when she brushed the horses, her palms steadied like muscle memory, refusing to surrender. I came home because no one else would. Mom and Dad said they were too busy with Harper's boutique launch in Nashville. My sister always had a spotlight waiting for her. I had responsibility. Evenings became our ritual. The two of us would sit on the back porch, a chipped rocking chair beneath her and an old stool for me. The air smelled of hay and rain-soaked dirt. Fireflies blinked in the tall grass, each tiny glow like a secret being kept. Margaret's voice was soft, nearly swallowed by the crickets. "These horses remember who feeds them," she said one night, brushing her thumb along a brass horseshoe she held in her lap. "They remember who pulls them through storms. Land is the same. It remembers who tends it." She pressed the horseshoe into my hand. Cold, rough, heavy. "Keep this close, Madison. When people try to take what's yours, you'll need a reminder of where you come from." I didn't know then what she meant, not fully. But the way her eyes lingered on mine, clear, steady, almost warning, etched it into me. During the day, I'd help her with chores. The barns smelled of leather and dust ropes coiled like sleeping snakes along the beams. I'd haul water buckets, my arms aching, while she taught me how to listen to the shift of a horse's breath, to the way the soil changed color when it was thirsty. She spoke about the ranch like it was alive, a creature that needed love and defense. Harper visited once that summer. She breezed in with perfume clinging to her dress, snapping selfies against the barn wall, laughing about Nashville investors lining up for her boutique. She stayed less than 2 hours. When she hugged Margaret goodbye, my grandmother's hands trembled against her back. Later, Margaret whispered to me, "Some people visit roots only to cut them." I didn't answer. I just tucked the words away. I remember one afternoon especially. The sky darkened, sudden a storm rolling in like a wall. I rushed to pull the horses inside, rain pelting my skin mud, sucking at my boots. Margaret stood at the barn door, her frame outlined by lightning. "Faster, Madison!" she shouted, her frail voice cracking against the wind. Together, we got them safe. Soaked through lungs burning, I looked at her and saw a flicker of the strength she once carried, unyielding, fierce, and protective. That night, after the storm had passed, she traced the grain of the dining table with her fingertip and told me stories about how she and my grandfather bought the land after the war, how every fence post was dug by hand, how neighbors once gathered in this very kitchen to plan harvest festivals. Her eyes glistened when she said, "This land is more than property. It's memory, Madison. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." I nodded, but inside I felt a knot. I knew my parents didn't see the ranch that way. To them, it was a burden, a dollar sign, a problem waiting for a developer's offer. And Harper saw opportunity the kind you cash out of, not build on. The brass horseshoe sat heavy in my pocket that whole summer. Whenever doubt crept in about leaving my career in Louisville, about watching Harper chase dreams while I shouldered responsibility, I'd run my thumb along its ridges. Margaret's words echoed. Some people visit roots only to cut them. Back then, I couldn't imagine how literal that warning would become. Harper's requests always started the same way, sweet casual, dressed up like favors instead of debts. It was late August when she called me, her voice bubbling through the receiver like champagne. "Madison, I just need a little push. 2,000, that's all. The boutique's about to launch and investors are watching. If I can get this shipment in time, it's going to explode. I had just finished patching the barn roof, my hands raw from holding shingles against the Kentucky sun. Sweat still stung my eyes when I sat on the porch steps and listened. $2,000 was nearly everything in my savings scraped together from freelance design jobs. My diploma from the University of Louisville still hung in my room, crisp and unfulfilled. I had dreamed of restoring historic homes in the city, but instead I was sanding splintered beams and calculating water bills. Still, I said yes. I wired the money, telling myself it was temporary, that she would pay me back. Mom beamed when she heard. She cupped Harper's face during Sunday dinner, pride shining in her eyes. "Your sister's going places," she said loud enough for me to hear across the table. Dad chuckled, nodding while I pushed roasted carrots around my plate. Not once did they ask how I was doing. Not once did they notice the ink stains on my fingers from late nights sketching designs I never showed them. That night, I opened a notebook I kept hidden under my mattress. I logged the loan in neat handwriting, $2,000. Harper, unpaid. Beside it, I scribbled a note, emotional pressure from Mom. At first it felt silly, like a petty diary entry, but some small voice told me to keep record, a voice that sounded suspiciously like Margaret's. The calls kept coming. "Just one more shipment, Mads, I swear," Harper laughed over the line. "You're the reliable one. Inventory's stuck in customs. I'll pay you back double when the season ends. Think of it as investing in family." Every time I hesitated, every time I caved, another 1,000 here, 500 there. I logged it all in the notebook, which grew heavier each week, the inked pages like chains. Meanwhile, the ranch was crumbling. The roof leaked during a fall, stormwater dripping into buckets I placed in the hallway. The irrigation system for the small crop fields failed under the summer heat. Replacement parts cost me $300 a month extra. Dad shrugged when I asked him to pitch in. "It's old." "What can you do?" Mom didn't even look up from her phone where Harper's boutique photos gleamed on the screen. "Your sister's so bold," she gushed. "She's not afraid to take risks." I wanted to scream, but instead, I opened the notebook and logged another entry, $5,000, roof repairs, from my salary. Margaret noticed. She would watch me at the kitchen table, my shoulders curled over the pages. One evening, as the cicadas droned outside, she reached across and tapped the notebook with her trembling finger. "Keep those records close, child," she whispered. "Roots without proof wither in the drought." Her words lodged deep inside me like a seed planted in hard soil. By the time I turned 27, the pattern was impossible to ignore. Harper floated in and out of the ranch, her arms laden with shopping bags, her laugh filling the halls for a day or two before she vanished back to Nashville. Mom and Dad showered her with praise, their conversations orbiting her boutique's grand potential. And me, I became invisible, the silent financier, keeping everything afloat. The resentment grew quietly like a crack in a dam. I tried to bury it, but sometimes it broke through in sharp questions. "When exactly is Harper paying me back?" I asked once during dinner. Mom froze, fork midair. "She's under so much pressure, Madison. Don't be cruel." Dad added, "Family doesn't keep score." But I did. Page after page, I kept score. At night, when the ranch was still, I'd flip through the entries, the ink marks glowing under my desk lamp. The numbers stared back like accusations. Every line told me the same thing: I was the doormat, the reliable one, the one they knew would never say no. Sometimes I caught myself wondering if Margaret hadn't been there, would I have given up already? She was fading, but her presence was like an anchor. She saw me in a way no one else did. When she gripped my hand, pressing the old horseshoe against my palm, it was as if she knew what storm was coming. And storms were coming. I could feel it in the way Harper's requests grew bolder, in the way Mom's tone grew sharper whenever I questioned anything, in the way Dad deflected responsibility with a laugh. Open loops formed in my mind. How far would they push me? How long could I keep patching both the ranch and Harper's debts before something cracked? I didn't know it then, but my notebook wasn't just a record. It was becoming a weapon. The day I found it was one of those Kentucky afternoons where the air felt heavier than water. I'd been working on a freelance project redesigning a historic carriage house for a small museum downtown and decided to clear out the old storage shed at the ranch for space. The shed had always smelled of oil dust and rusted nails, the kind of place where time didn't move. I shoved aside a pile of irrigation manuals Margaret had hoarded, and something slipped out a yellowed envelope sealed with her looping handwriting, Margaret Clark Estate. My hands stilled. The sunlight slanted through a crack in the tin roof dust, swirling in gold flecks around me. My pulse thumped in my ears as I crouched down, brushing dirt off the flap. I tore it open right there on the concrete floor. Inside was a folded legal document, its edges brittle. The heading read, Deed of Transfer, 2017. The words blurred until I blinked them into focus. It named Madison Clarkme as the sole owner of the ranch, signed and notarized by Margaret herself. A second sheet was tucked inside, a letter written in Margaret's careful script. This land is your roots now. Preserve it. Don't let outsiders turn it into something it was never meant to be. Your parents may stay as tenants at will, but no claim of ownership holds. You see what lasts, Madison. Protect it. The paper trembled in my hands. My throat tightened until I couldn't breathe. For nearly a decade, I had poured money and sweat into this place, thinking it belonged to them, Mom, Dad, Harper. And all along, it had been mine. Margaret had trusted me with it silently, privately. I reread the deed 3 times. Each line felt like both salvation and betrayal. I sat back against an old toolbox, the metallic smell mixing with the faint sweetness of spilled grain from years ago. My mind spun. Why hadn't anyone told me? Why had Mom and Dad kept silent while they let me bleed my savings into repairs? I thought back to Margaret's last days, how she had squeezed my hand in the hospital, whispering, "Keep your records close." Was this what she meant? That night I scanned the deed into my laptop. The glow of the screen lit the dark kitchen as I searched through Kentucky property law. My eyes burned from hours of reading statutes, adverse possession, transfer validity, statute of limitations. One detail seared itself into me in Kentucky. The statute of limitations to contest a notarized deed was 4 years, 4 years, and 2021 had long passed. The ranch was untouchably mine. Still, I needed confirmation. I drafted an email to Henry Collins, the attorney whose name Margaret had mentioned once, tucked between stories of the ranch's early years. I attached the scan hands, shaking. His reply came the next morning. Document is legitimate. You hold sole title. Diane and Richard Clark are tenants at will only. No contest possible. Advise discretion until you are ready. Discretion. The word cut through me like glass. Keeping a secret while living under the same roof with people who had lied for years, it felt unbearable. That evening, I tested the waters. Over dinner, I casually mentioned the water bill for the ranch. $4,000 this quarter, I said, setting my fork down. It's getting harder to keep up. Mom didn't flinch. She simply waved her fork. Of course it's our house. We'll manage. Dad grunted in agreement, eyes never leaving his plate. The words lodged like a blade in my chest. Our house. I pressed record on my phone in my pocket, the red light invisible. Their voices casual as air became evidence. The next day, Harper called. "Sis, I'm drowning here. The boutique's tanking. Tyler's dragging his feet on support. Can you spare $10,000 just this once?" "No," I said, flat and final. The silence on the line was almost sweet. "Fine," she snapped. "Be that way." I logged the refusal in my notebook. Refused loan. First boundary. It felt like the first brick in a wall I'd needed all my life. But still, the questions haunted me. Why had Mom and Dad hidden the deed? Had they been waiting to sell the ranch to developers to cash out while I unknowingly carried the load? Or worse, had Harper already promised something she had no right to promise I didn't know? But I intended to find out. That weekend, I called Chloe Anderson, an old college friend who had gone into real estate law. We met in a cafe downtown, the clatter of cups and the strum of a guitar filling the air. I slid the envelope across the table. Her eyes widened as she unfolded the papers. "This is ironclad, Mads," she said, her lawyer's voice sharp. "They can't touch this, but if you want to confront them, do it smart. Evidence first, reactions second. You let them dig their hole, then you pull the floor out." She scribbled on a napkin outlining a strategy provoke Harper into a public claim, reveal the deed, confirm it live with her on a video call. Let the truth echo where it couldn't be denied. I pocketed the napkin like it was a battle plan. For the first time in years, I felt control shifting back toward me. The blue leather folder sat on my desk that night, the deed inside. I ran my thumb along its edge, my pulse steadying. The horseshoe Margaret had given me lay beside it, its brass dull with age. 2 relics, 1 paper, 1 metal, both carrying the weight of inheritance. And I realized something that chilled me. My parents and Harper didn't just see me as the reliable one, they saw me as disposable. The next time they tried to push me out, they'd learn the truth. The air in the ranch grew heavier after I discovered the deed, though no one else knew I had it. Every hallway conversation, every Sunday dinner felt like a rehearsal for some play they had written me into a role where I was nothing more than the quiet, reliable daughter. Only now I carried a script of my own. I started small. One evening, cicadas humming outside, I leaned back at the dinner table and said I got the water bill for the ranch today, $4,000 this quarter. I let the number hang. Mom's fork froze mid-air. Then, almost too quickly, she recovered her voice smooth. Of course it's our house. We'll manage. Dad grunted his agreement without lifting his eyes. My heart slammed against my ribs, but I kept my face still. The phone in my pocket recorded every word. Later, listening back to her casual tone, I felt both fury and vindication. They weren't just careless, they were certain. A week later, Harper and Ethan visited. I watched them from the kitchen window, their silhouettes against the fading sun as they paced the patio. Their voices carried just enough for me to catch pieces. Developers paying top dollar. Ethan said, his tone clipped and businesslike. Retirement for Mom and Dad, quick flip, Harper added. I gripped the counter until my knuckles whitened. There it was proof of intention. They weren't just dreaming, they were negotiating. That night, I sat at my desk flipping through the notebook where every expense, every loan, every betrayal lived in black ink. The numbers weren't just debts anymore, they were ammunition. The deed sat in its folder beside me, and for the first time, I felt the strange calm of someone who knows she's holding the winning card. But I couldn't play it yet. Harper's calls became more desperate. Madison, I need $8,000 this time. Inventory's stuck. Customs are killing me. I can't, I said. Don't do this, she snapped. You know Mom will never forgive you if you let me sink. Mom's text arrived minutes later. Your sister is fighting so hard. Don't abandon her. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. Abandon her for years, I had drained myself to keep her afloat. For once, I didn't reply. Instead, I slipped my phone into my pocket, pressed record again, and dialed Chloe. She answered on the second ring. Chloe, I've got evidence piling up. Recordings, notes, even their conversations about developers. Good, she said. Don't confront them yet. Let them set the stage. Then, you control the spotlight. Her confidence steadied me. She even handed me a small silver USB drive the next time we met, sliding it across the cafe table. All your files encrypted. Backup. Keep it safe. I carried that USB everywhere like a hidden dagger. By early fall, whispers turned to actions. One evening as I stepped out to dump trash, I heard Ethan on his phone by the fence line. His voice was sharp, the kind used for deals. Deposit wired, $25,000. Once the paperwork's signed, we're in the clear. I froze, heart pounding, listening as his words dissolved into the night. A deposit. On land that wasn't his. I wrote it in bold letters in my notebook, $25,000 deposit. Fraud. I knew then that Thanksgiving would be the stage. Everyone would be gathered. The house would be dressed in false warmth, the table heavy with food, their smiles masking schemes. And when Harper tried to push me out, I would answer. But even as I plotted, doubt gnawed at me. I'd lie awake at night staring at the ceiling, wondering if I could really do it. Evict my own parents, expose my sister. End decades of twisted loyalty in one blow. The horseshoe Margaret had given me sat on my nightstand. Sometimes I'd press it to my palm, its edges digging into my skin until I almost drew blood. Roots without proof wither in the drought, she had said. I had proof, but was I ready to use it? One afternoon in November, Mom cornered me in the kitchen. "Harper says you're being difficult." She began, her voice sharp. "She needs help, Madison. Family helps family." I looked her in the eye. Family doesn't lie about who owns the roof over their heads. Her face blanched, but she said nothing, turning instead to stir the soup bubbling on the stove. I caught the tremor in her hands. Dad tried a softer tactic a few days later. "We're all just trying to survive, kiddo. Don't make things harder than they need to be." His hand landed heavy on my shoulder, but I stepped out from under it. Their pressure was building, but so was mine. The folder was ready. The USB was ready. The recordings were lined up. Still, part of me wondered when the moment came, would I be strong enough to slam the truth down in front of them, or would years of habit, of silence, of compliance pull me back into their grip? Thanksgiving loomed like a storm cloud, pressing closer each day, and I knew when it broke, nothing would ever be the same again. Thanksgiving arrived with the kind of chill that seeps into your bones before you realize it. The sky over Nashville was slate gray, the trees outside stripped bare branches rattling like brittle bones in the wind. Inside the ranch smelled of roasted turkey cinnamon and fresh bread. It should have felt warm. It didn't. I had spent the morning cooking, kneading almond-studded stuffing while my hands shook from more than the cold. Every move felt like staging the heavy oak table laid with placemats I'd stitched by hand. The chandelier glowing just a shade too bright, my phone tucked into my apron pocket, already recording. By late afternoon, the front door opened and Harper swept in. Ethan close behind her, their kids Mason and Lily dragging shiny new tablets. Their laughter was shrill manufactured, bouncing against the stucco walls. My parents followed, arms outstretched, fawning over the children, ignoring me. We sat, plates piled high, silverware clinking. For a moment there was silence, but for the scrape of forks. Then I played my first card. "This ranch," I said lightly, "prime real estate now. I've heard developers are buying up land like this for campus projects." Harper's eyes flicked to Ethan. He smirked, adjusting his cufflinks. "Exactly," she said. "Which is why we're selling. Mom and Dad are on board. It's time to cash in." My heart thudded. I forced my face to stay neutral. "You ran this by me, didn't you?" I asked softly. Her smile twisted into a sneer. "Why would we? You're just the helper, Madison." And then her hand cracked across my cheek. The sound echoed through the dining room. 10 minutes, she spat, to pack your stuff and get out of my house." Mom clapped, laughing under her breath. "About time, Harper." Dad chuckled too, the sound like sandpaper. The sting spread across my face, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I smiled, slow and deliberate. "I see." I reached into my bag, pulled out the blue leather folder, and slammed it on the table. The thud rattled the silverware. The chandelier trembled. "Then you all have 5. The room froze. Harper's fork clattered against her plate. Ethan's jaw went slack. Even Mason and Lily stopped chewing, eyes wide. I flipped the folder open, sliding the deed across the table. "This ranch is mine." "You're lying," Harper snapped, lunging for the paper. "This is fake. You're scamming us." Ethan's face turned red. "We'll sue." I tapped my phone, bringing Chloe onto video call. Her calm face appeared on the screen. "Madison Clark owns the ranch outright," she said, her voice clear. "Deeded in 2017 by Margaret Clark. Notarized and uncontestable under Kentucky law since 2021. And you're being recorded." I swiped to play the audio clip I'd saved Mom's voice from months ago, saying, "Of course it's our house." The words filled the room like a curse. Ethan sputtered, This isn't over." I leaned back, unshaken. "You took a $25,000 deposit on property you don't own. That's fraud, Ethan. Good luck explaining that." Harper's face drained of color. She grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him and the kids toward the door. "Come on," she hissed, slamming it behind her so hard the chandelier rattled again. The turkey sat untouched, steam fading. Mom stared at her lap napkin crumpled in her fist. Dad's jaw clenched, his face purple with rage. I wasn't finished. I slid my laptop across the table, pulling up the notebook scans. Rows upon rows scrolled across the screen, $35,000 in repairs since Margaret died, $15,000 in loans to Harper. Every number a wound. That's me, I said, evenly paying for irrigation when water bills spiked. Fixing leaks you ignored, funding Harper's fantasy while you smiled and let me. Mom's breath hitched, tears brimming. We didn't ask, no, I cut in. You just complained until I stepped in. Dad slammed his palm against the table. This is family business. Secrets keep us together. Secrets, I echoed. Like letting me think this ranch was yours while you plotted to sell it to developers. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the brass horseshoe Margaret had given me. I set it gently on top of the deed, the sound sharp against the wood. This is proof. This is legacy. And this, I tapped the horseshoe, is mine to protect. The room was silent except for Mom's sobs. Even the fridge in the kitchen seemed to hum quieter. Tomorrow, I said, standing, you'll get a 3-day eviction notice. After that, you're tenants no more. Dad's fork slipped from his hand, clattering onto the plate. His voice dropped low. Evicting your own parents. You'll regret this. I gathered my phone and folded my pulse steady. No, I regret waiting this long. As I walked from the room, Mason's small voice carried after me. Aunt Madison, why are you fighting? The question pierced deeper than any threat, but I didn't turn back. The silence after Thanksgiving didn't last. Within a week, papers were filed in the county court. Chloe guided me through every step, her calm voice steady as we assembled receipts, recordings, and the deed itself. The process felt clinical, but every form I signed carried the weight of years of silence breaking apart. The eviction notice went out 3 days later. My parents didn't speak to me when the sheriff posted it on the ranch gate. Mom cried in the kitchen, her sobs echoing down the hallway, while Dad slammed doors and muttered curses under his breath. I stayed upstairs, listening, hands clenched around the brass horseshoe on my nightstand. By March, the court's decision was final. The ranch was mine alone, legally affirmed. My parents packed their things into cardboard boxes, their faces drawn and gray. I stood on the porch as the locksmith changed the locks, watching them load their battered SUV. Mom didn't look up, though. I caught the reflection of tears on her cheeks. Dad gunned the engine without a word. They drove away toward a low-cost assisted living facility in Bowling Green, a place I'd found in court filings after their accounts drained under legal fees. It should have felt like victory. Instead, I felt hollow, the kind of emptiness you only get after cutting something toxic from your life, relief laced with grief. Harper and Ethan unraveled faster. Chloe's report on the fraudulent deposit went straight to federal investigators. Within weeks, the IRS launched an audit into Ethan's consulting fees. They uncovered $50,000 in unreported income, shady deals tied to his past flips. Bankruptcy followed. Harper's boutique, once paraded across social media, closed in a fire sale. By January, she was posting desperate updates blaming family betrayal while creditors circled. She texted me once more. This is your fault. We're homeless. The kids don't understand. Help me. I stared at the message until the words blurred, then pressed delete. I had nothing left to give. The valley air felt different by spring. Lighter somehow. I walked the ranch fields in early mornings, dew slick on my boots, the almond trees blooming pale against the chill. For the first time in years, I breathed without waiting for another demand to come crashing down. With Chloe's help, I launched Heritage Roots Design, blending my degree with Margaret's legacy. Clients came from across Kentucky, drawn to workshops on preserving historic barns or tours of the almond grove that Margaret once tended. The business netted enough in its first year to install solar-powered irrigation, freeing the ranch from crushing water bills. For once, I wasn't patching leaks for survival, I was building for the future. Daniel, a landscape architect I met through a co-op project, started spending weekends at the ranch. He didn't ask me to explain the past. He just walked the fields beside me, pointing out soil lines and sketching ideas for sustainable fencing. His presence was steady, a reminder that not everyone wanted to take. Sometimes at dusk, I'd stand by the new gate where I had hung Margaret's brass horseshoe. Its edges caught the fading light, casting a soft glow. To me, it wasn't just a charm, it was a verdict. Proof that the roots she entrusted me with had survived the storm. I thought often about Mason's voice that night, Aunt Madison. Why are you fighting? I still didn't have an answer simple enough for a child. Maybe someday when he's older, he'll understand. That I wasn't fighting to destroy family. I was fighting to save myself. Boundaries aren't revenge. their survival. And in the quiet of the ranch, with the fields stretching wide and the wind carrying Margaret's memory through the trees, I finally understood survival could look a lot like peace. If you were me standing in that dining room with your own family laughing as they tried to cut you out, what would you have done? Would you have stayed silent or slammed the truth down like I did? Tell me in the comments because I want to know how you'd carry that moment. And if this story pulled you in, don't forget to subscribe. More stories like this are coming: twisted betrayals, quiet revenge, and the unexpected strength that rises when family tries to break you. Stay tuned.